Hello there, my name is Kurt Harris, and I am submitting a research proposal analyzing a comparative view on preventative diplomacy and whether preventative diplomacy actually creates better trade and commerce for peacetime rather than during conflicted times. So basically, as I summarize the proposal, it is going to be basically about um, whether trade and commerce and travel, tourism, etc., is affected by, in a positive or negative light, by during times of war or conflict, or is it better off during times of peace or preventative diplomacy or diplomatic efforts? So I thought this proposal would be good to use because preventative diplomacy has been shut down by many critics in the past just by how it's not a good way to go about actually creating talk and dialogue between countries, preemptive measures and what have you. And there's also been other arguments that war and conflict actually can help the economy of a country, which we did see that in World War II with the United States. We saw factories booming, we saw the economy booming, jobs booming, GDP picked up. Basically, I would say that it really helped create a superpower for the United States. I mean, it really became a hegemony at that point after World War II. So that's one view. But other views you can see during the Vietnam War, you could see during, even the Iraq War, what happened, the financial crisis and the recession that has followed. You can see, well, maybe war, certain kinds of war, doesn't promote a good GDP or a good economy. And that's basically what I'm trying to propose here. Now, at first I was going to do the genuine progress indicator and the gross national happiness. I figured out that was going to be too difficult to find specific data on the genuine progress indicator and the gross national happiness. But I feel that I can find more data on the levels of trade and commerce through GDP during times of war and during times of peace. And I want to try to do two different decades here. Really, I was going off of multiple times throughout history, but that might be even too difficult and too broad. So I'm really trying to narrow this down to two different decades, not World War II, but after that, to see, because obviously we know World War II, it did create a better economy for the United States and for a lot of Western European nations, right? Okay. But after World War II, I want to see maybe two different times of war and two different decades of peace that, in analyzing the trade and commerce and the GDP between those and see what the numbers provide us. I wanted to do the happiness level factor, but I think gross national happiness, I don't think that economic indicator has always been around. I mean, I know in Nepal they have a happiness minister and things like that, but I really don't think it's a big statistic that's been around for a while, and I think it's going to be hard data to kind of scrounge up. Now, I do want to say why this is an important project to research is because I do believe that there is a big argument in Washington, and I think in a lot of Western European nations, that war can actually be a good thing as far as helping the economy, helping create jobs. We see the military-industrial complex going. A lot of people depend on wartime. I mean, the military does. Defense contracting, private military firms, they absolutely depend on war and conflicts and things going on, things that the United States are doing in foreign lands and even within its own. But I think there's also, it's important to analyze whether it's really the right action, and is peacetime actually better at promoting different kind of things? More like, I'm thinking of more like Renaissance. Is it better at promoting art and culture throughout the nation? Is it better at promoting education throughout the nation? Are more people getting educated during peacetime? Are jobs being increased? Oh, what kind of are there more high-paying jobs available? Not just factory jobs or assembling jobs or just little manufacturing jobs, but there's actually higher wage-paid, empowering jobs that are available. Which that is going to be a hard statistic to find because you could define empowering job as almost anything. But I'm going to do my best with that. But I do believe that it is important to see that because there are two strong arguments to the analysis, and if I can find the good data between trade commerce for 2 decades of peacetime and 2 decades of war, I can compare them both and see. I also wanted to do a little survey too, maybe of some family members or some other people, a short random sample survey of just what people's opinions would be on how trade and commerce would be affected during war and how they think it'd be affected during peacetime. So whether they think that it's a positive thing for the economy during peacetime, as far as trade, commerce, travel, tourism, etc. goes, or actually no, I think during wartime it's picked up. I mean, obviously not during this war, but we've seen in other ones. So I do believe that this is a very important case to be projected here. I do believe that the class would be interested in this because preventative diplomacy and war is a huge thing in our culture. It's something that Bill Clinton has expressed about. He was big on preventative diplomacy. Newt Gingrich, we saw, wasn't so much when he was in charge of the House. So we've seen in this country a lot of talk between diplomacy and war, and there's advocates on both sides, strong advocates. So I think it's good to find some economic data that can show the numbers of actually here's what on paper it looks like. Doesn't mean if something's on paper and it looks good, like a country's GDP, it doesn't always mean that the economy is booming and the economy is great. That's true. But I do want to show, at least on paper, what it looks like during times of peace and during times of war, as far as GDP, maybe some trade data, some commerce data, purchasing power. I want to examine some different economic indicators, per capita, that will really show what's going on during these times, during these 2 decades of war and conflict, and the 2 decades of diplomatic efforts or peacetime. I am making an assumption here, though, based on, I'm assuming that during peacetime that we are doing diplomatic ventures, that we are out there. Our foreign policy is much more reserved. We are trying to expand dialogue between nations, maybe nations that we've had trouble with in the past. And then, of course, I want to sign 2 decades where we might be looking for trouble. We might be going out there and trying to find trouble between other nations. We're getting aggressive with more nations that we've had trouble with in the past. And there's sporadic conflicts. Because I'm going to try to find 2 decades where there's not necessarily a gigantic war. I do want to analyze at least 1 decade with a large-scale war, larger scale at least. But I also want to have a decade where there's sporadic conflicts, where there's, we have private contracts over here, almost mercenary type people over there, in this country doing this, trying to form a coup over here, like during Kissinger in Chile with Pinochet and things like that. So I want to see how that works. But I think the most important data, though, is going to be the economic data surrounding the larger scale war and the economic data surrounding a long-term peacetime effort, with the assumption that we are performing diplomatic ventures. Now, I do want to at least give information on what preventative diplomacy actually is. And preventative diplomacy refers to the actions or institutions that are used to keep the political disputes that arise between or within nations from escalating into armed force. Okay, and that was by Michael Lund in 1995. And the reason why I chose preventative diplomacy is because it is often oversold to policymakers, this idea of preemptive measures before it escalates into an armed battle. It's often, that's what everyone is talking about as far as, well, maybe we can do some kind of diplomatic effort, but it's always shut down as, well, no, we're America, we can go in there and handle this ourselves. So I want to really show that well, according to economic data, this is what happens during war, and this is what happens during peacetime and during more diplomatic ventures. Um, obviously, we could look under, Bill Clinton. There was definitely a little bit more of diplomatic ventures going on there, a little bit more peacetime, a little bit more of engaging between nations. Um, I would even say with Ronald Reagan, I would even say that there was some more diplomatic ventures going on. And then we could see with George W. Bush, obviously, that there was not much diplomatic ventures going on. And we've seen with Barack Obama, we've seen some more diplomatic ventures, but definitely not as much as maybe we would have liked to see. There's still, we're still overseas. We're still, basically in battle. I mean, you can basically assume that we're in battle over there, just because we do have military force over there still. So I do want to go into one case here of preventive diplomacy in Macedonia on November 11th, 1992. Heavy violence was occurring in the Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo region. The Macedonian president requested the presence of UN peacekeepers to help prevent the conflicts from spilling over into Macedonia. The UN Security Council authorized the United Nations Preventative Deployment Force to prevent the spread of the violence into neighboring countries. The United Nations Preventative Deployment Force monitored the borders of Macedonia and successfully prevented the spread of war into Macedonia all the way from 1992 through 1999. Its presence absolutely assisted in preventing the kinds of violence that was seen in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo. And this is from the Friends Committee on National Legislation, 2012. I do think that one case does show that preventative measures can work and are effective, although there was battle going on. So it wasn't completely effective in stopping battle, but I do believe that that preventative measure helped stop a large-scale war, and I think that, and my conclusion here is that it did improve the economy of Macedonia. I do believe that if the war had spilled into Macedonia with destruction of infrastructure, devaluing currency, displacement of people, I do believe that the economy would have struggled a lot more than if the Macedonian president had not initiated the United Nations Preventive Deployment Force, approved by the Security Council. So that was one of the main ideas that I wanted to give for that. Now, obviously, war can be glorified. War can be exemplified in a way that can really get people to nationalize. And I think that's why it's been popular in America as far as, justice. And we're Americans, we're patriots, we stand together. And I think that war is a more popular solution than preventive diplomacy. But popular doesn't always mean the most effective. So the real research construction here that I want to go over is it's really going to be a comparative analysis between 4 different decades of wartime and peace, and whether the trade, commerce, tourism, purchasing power per capita is affected negatively or positively by times of large-scale war and sporadic conflict, and times of peace and decades of peace, under the assumption that we are going out there and having diplomatic ventures, which is attributing to this peacetime. And I do believe this is an important case for the class to take under consideration because it is of utmost importance as we are in battle right now. And I think in the future, preventative diplomacy or acts of war are going to be under heavy scrutiny as to what we do next as we learn from the Iraq War, as we have spent trillions of dollars on a war and we're massively in debt because of it, compared to much cheaper preventative diplomacy measures. And I think these are going to be, in the future, become very heated debates on to what to do next. Thank you very much for listening to my proposal. I appreciate it, and have a very good day. And once again, my name is Kurt Harris, and this is Research Methods with Michael Goodman. Thank you very much.